Good evening, my friends. One ranking has suddenly created a major debate around the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if these evaluations truly reflect how NFL decision makers view this roster, then Pittsburgh enters the 2026 season with something to prove. ESPN has released its annual positional rankings, explaining that the results are based on votes from NFL executives, coaches, and scouts across the league. And according to those rankings, only one Steelers player is considered a top 10 player at his position. That alone is enough to get Steelers fans talking, because when you look at the talent currently on this roster, it's difficult not to question whether the national perception of Pittsburgh is actually accurate. The only Steelers player who officially landed inside ESPN's top 10 was TJ Watt, who was ranked 7th among edge rushers. On the surface, that sounds like recognition, but when you dig a little deeper, it actually raises even more questions. Just 1 year ago, Watt was ranked 2nd, meaning he has fallen several spots after a season in which many observers believed his production declined compared to his usual standards. Even so, there is a strong argument that this ranking may not reflect what is about to happen this season. The expectation surrounding Watt is very different entering 2026. With Patrick Graham now leading the defense, there is growing belief that Pittsburgh will finally move Watt around more frequently, instead of allowing offenses to game plan against him in predictable situations. The expectation is that Graham's defensive approach will create far more one-on-one opportunities, putting Watt back into situations where he has historically dominated. The belief is that his sack numbers could return to the mid-teen range, making him once again the defensive centerpiece that offenses fear every Sunday. Still, even if you accept Watt's ranking, another concern immediately appears. If he is truly the only top 10 player on the roster, what does that say about the rest of the team? That is exactly the perception these rankings create, and many Steelers fans are likely to disagree. There is one important detail that should not be ignored. ESPN did not publish rankings for kickers. Had they done so, Chris Boswell almost certainly would have appeared near the very top of the list. There is even a strong case that he belongs among the 3 best kickers in football, if not number 1. So technically, Pittsburgh may already have another elite player who simply wasn't included because that position wasn't ranked at all. Beyond Watt, a handful of Steelers at least received honorable mentions. Joey Porter Jr., Pat Freiermuth, and Patrick Queen were recognized as players just outside the top 10 at their respective positions. While that sounds encouraging, it also sparked debate because many observers believe other Steelers deserved stronger recognition than at least some of the names that appeared as honorable mentions. Then comes another interesting layer. 6 additional Steelers received votes from league evaluators but failed to earn honorable mention status. That group included DK Metcalf, Zach Frazier, Cam Heyward, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Jalen Ramsey. Even that list raises questions. Ramsey, for example, was listed as a safety despite expectations that he will primarily play cornerback this season. Meanwhile, several of those players have built strong resumes that many fans believe deserved considerably more respect. Perhaps even more surprising were the positions where Pittsburgh received absolutely no recognition whatsoever. No quarterback earned votes. No running back earned votes. Not even an offensive tackle received consideration. While the quarterback omission may not shock many people, seeing the running back room and offensive tackle position receive zero recognition certainly stands out and adds to the feeling that the Steelers remain underestimated entering the season. The biggest controversy, however, revolves around 3 specific players. Cam Heyward, despite consecutive All-Pro seasons, somehow failed to make the top 10 among defensive linemen. Joey Porter Jr., whose coverage production and ability to limit opposing receivers continued to impress, was also left outside the top 10 according to these rankings. Then there is Zach Frazier, whose first 2 NFL seasons have established him as one of the league's most promising interior offensive linemen, yet he was limited to simply receiving votes instead of earning even an honorable mention. Those omissions have become some of the most debated aspects of the entire ranking, because many believe all 3 players have already demonstrated enough consistency to deserve significantly higher recognition. When you step back and look at the full picture, this isn't simply about one list. It's about how the rest of the NFL currently views Pittsburgh. Whether those evaluations turn out to be accurate or completely miss the mark will only be answered once the regular season begins. But one thing is already certain: these rankings have given the Steelers plenty of motivation heading into 2026. Do you think ESPN ESPN and the NFL executives seriously underestimated this Steelers roster? Or do you believe Pittsburgh still has to prove it on the field before earning more respect? The reality is that preseason rankings have always created headlines, but they have never decided championships. That's the part many Steelers fans should remember before putting too much weight into this list. Every July, analysts, executives, coaches, and scouts make predictions about which players deserve elite status. Then September arrives, the games begin, and those opinions start changing almost immediately. That's exactly why this discussion is so fascinating. Pittsburgh now has an opportunity to completely rewrite the narrative. The biggest reason for optimism is that this roster isn't standing still. Several players are entering seasons where they're expected to take another significant step forward, and that could completely change how this team is viewed by the end of the year. Patrick Graham's arrival brings an entirely different defensive philosophy, and that alone could unlock better performances from multiple veterans and young stars who may not have been used to their full potential previously. Take Jaylen Warren, for example. Despite not receiving a single vote in ESPN's positional rankings, there is genuine belief that this could become the season where his role expands considerably. He's already shown throughout his NFL career that he can be an explosive playmaker whenever given opportunities. Now the expectation is that he'll become a much larger part of Pittsburgh's offensive identity. If that happens, it wouldn't be surprising to see people looking back at these rankings months from now wondering how he was completely ignored before the season even started. Pat Freiermuth is another player whose expectations continue to rise. Already receiving an honorable mention among tight ends, there is growing confidence that he could produce the best season of his career. Much of that optimism comes from the belief that his chemistry with Aaron Rodgers could make him one of the offense's most reliable targets. If that connection develops the way many expect, Freiermuth may not simply remain an honorable mention next year. He could easily force his way into the top 10 discussion. Then there's Troy Fautanu, another player surrounded by enormous expectations. After showing encouraging development last season, the belief is that moving back to left tackle could allow him to establish himself as Pittsburgh's long-term franchise player at one of the most important positions on the field. Offensive tackles received zero recognition in ESPN's rankings, but that may not remain the case for very long if Fautanu continues progressing the way the organization expects. Of course, Zach Frazier remains one of the strongest examples of why many Steelers fans disagree with these evaluations. After 2 impressive seasons, many already believe he belongs comfortably among the league's elite interior offensive linemen. The expectation isn't simply that he'll improve, it's that by the end of this season, there may not even be an argument anymore. Instead of barely receiving votes, he could emerge as a universally recognized top 10 interior lineman and possibly one of the NFL's very best centers. Cam Heyward finds himself in a similar situation. Being left outside the top 10 despite consecutive All-Pro recognition surprised many observers, but if he delivers another elite season, it becomes increasingly difficult for anyone to continue overlooking his production. Another dominant year would strengthen the case that he has already earned a place among the league's best defensive tackles. The younger defenders also represent an intriguing storyline. Derek Harmon enters his second NFL season with expectations that he can make a major leap after battling injuries previously. Meanwhile, Peyton Wilson could benefit significantly from Patrick Graham's defensive system, which is viewed as much more favorable for linebackers. If Wilson develops the way many inside Pittsburgh hope, he could become another player entering national conversations by the end of the year. And then there's Joey Porter Jr., perhaps the most debated omission of them all. Many already consider him a top 10 cornerback based on what he has accomplished over the past 2 seasons. If he repeats that level of production again, continuing to leave him outside those rankings will become almost impossible to justify. At some point, consistent elite performance forces everyone to acknowledge it. When everything is put together, that's really the message surrounding these rankings. They may generate discussion today, but they won't define this football team tomorrow. Football has never been won on preseason lists or off-season opinions. It gets decided every Sunday once the players step onto the field. That's why there's confidence that Pittsburgh can change the conversation throughout the season. If the coaching changes produce the expected improvements and several young players continue their development, this roster could look completely different in the eyes of the league by the time the season reaches its conclusion. conclusion. For now, the Steelers enter the season with plenty of motivation. Nationally, they're being viewed as a team with very few elite players. Inside the organization, however, there appears to be confidence that multiple players are ready to prove those evaluations wrong. Now it's simply a matter of turning that belief into production when the games begin. Beyond the debate itself, there is another angle that deserves attention. Rankings like these don't just measure what a player has accomplished in the past, they also shape expectations for the future. When only one player from an entire roster is viewed as top 10 at his position, the message being sent is clear. The rest of the league still has significant doubts about how much talent Pittsburgh truly possesses. That perception can become one of the biggest motivating factors inside a locker room. Every player who was overlooked now has a chance to prove that the evaluation was wrong. And when you examine some of the names that barely received recognition or didn't receive any at all, you can understand why many people around the Steelers believe this team has far more talent than these rankings suggest. Look at Joey Porter Jr. His production over the past 2 seasons has consistently placed him among the NFL's better young cornerbacks. His ability to stay in tight coverage and limit opposing receivers has already earned praise throughout the league, yet that still wasn't enough to place him inside the top 10. Instead, he was left with only an honorable mention, something many Steelers supporters will see as an incomplete reflection of what he has already accomplished. The same conversation applies to Cam Heyward. It's difficult to ignore consecutive All-Pro seasons, yet somehow that resume wasn't enough to earn a place among the league's 10 best defensive linemen according to these evaluations. That omission may end up becoming one of the biggest talking points if Heyward once again performs at an elite level this season.